Ever find yourself just, completely stuck arguing with someone who simply will not budge?
Oh, definitely.
Or maybe you've been that person sometimes.
We've all been there, I think.
Yeah. Well, today we're diving deep into stubbornness. And it seems so simple on the surface, right? Just a human trait. But looking into the sources, it's really this fascinating paradox. It can be a strength, but also, boy, can it be a weakness.
Exactly. And the sources we looked at, they define it pretty clearly. That sort of dogged determination not to change your attitude or your position, even when there are good reasons, good arguments telling you otherwise.
Just digging in your heels.
Totally. Refusing to change your mind or decisions, no matter what the situation throws at you.
And what really struck me is how universal it is. The sources point out it's not about gender, age, culture. It's everywhere. Think about those classic family dynamics, adult children and aging parents, both absolutely convinced they know best.
Okay.
Or even looking back, way back in history, biblical stories. You see figures like Pharaoh, defiantly stubborn against all odds.
Right.
But then you have someone like, say, the prophet Elijah, his commitment, his unwavering stance. That feels different, doesn't it? More like persistence.
It does, and that distinction is key. It really begs the question, why is this seemingly rigid trait so persistent in us humans? Is it purely negative, something we just need to, get over?
Which brings us to a really interesting angle from our sources. Looking at stubbornness through an AI lens, artificial intelligence.
Yeah, that was fascinating.
AI can crunch just massive amounts of data on human behavior, and it's actually starting to offer some surprising ideas about why we resist changing our minds.
But here's the really critical point, I think. There's a fundamental difference between how humans understand and how AI understands. AI can spot the patterns, yeah. It can even predict when someone might dig their heels in, but it doesn't have the feelings, the lived experience that shapes why we do that. No real emotional grasp.
Right. No empathy.
Exactly. That's the gap.
Okay, so let's really dig into this then.
Yeah.
That's the mission for this deep dive, right?
Yeah.
To unpack the psychology behind it, the biology.
The social stuff, too.
Yeah, how it changes as we grow up, how culture plays a role. And then how can AI actually help us maybe understand it better or even, handle it more effectively?
Precisely. So starting with the psychology, a lot of it seems to boil down to, self-preservation.
Makes sense.
That fear of change, maybe fear of failing. Those are really powerful drivers. And the desire for control is huge, too. Sometimes that goes way back to childhood experiences.
And just needing to feel like you know who you are, right? Sometimes backing down feels like you're losing a piece of yourself.
Absolutely. That need for a strong self-identity. And our sources mention perfectionism, too.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, if a solution isn't absolutely perfect, some people might just stubbornly reject it altogether. And then there's the classic sunk cost fallacy.
Ah, yes. We've all done that. Put so much time, effort, maybe money into something.
Exactly. And even if it's clearly not working, you double down rather than admit you made a bad call.
It's hard to cut your losses.
It really is. And insecurity is definitely in the mix. Our sources point to brain activity, actually. When our core beliefs get challenged, areas linked to threat response light up.
Wow. So it feels like an attack.
Kind of, yeah, like a primal threat. Philosophically, you can even see stubbornness as this sort of preemptive defense against feeling weak-willed. Like, I made this decision and I'm sticking to it no matter what, almost out of fear that you might cave otherwise.
So it's often a coping mechanism, trying to feel safe, feel in control, even if it's actually holding us back.
Exactly. The sources gave some good examples, like a manager resisting new methods because the old way feels safer, gives them control.
Or someone facing addiction, terrified of what life looks like without the substance.
Yeah.
The sheer scale of change needed.
Right. Or even just rejecting a good enough solution because it's not absolutely flawless. That perfectionism again.
Okay, so if we take that down to the biological level, you mentioned brain activity.
Yeah, it gets even more concrete there. The sources highlight increased activity in the amygdala, that's like the brain's fear center.
The alarm system.
Right. And the insular cortex, which processes gut feelings, emotional significance. When our beliefs are challenged, those areas ramp up.
So you literally feel threatened.
Pretty much. And that makes you less likely to change your mind. Plus, there's more activity in the default mode network, which is tied to, our sense of self, who we are.
And you mentioned addiction earlier. That changes the brain physically, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. Addiction literally rewires the brain. New pathways form, receptors change, making getting and using the drug the absolute top priority.
So it's not just willpower.
Not at all. The brain structure is altered, making it incredibly hard to see the truth of the situation, and those memories linked to the drug become intensely powerful, driving the cravings.
Wow, okay. Is there a genetic link too? Like, are some people just born more stubborn?
Well, it's not quite a single stubborn gene, but yeah, genetics definitely play a role. Temperament, which includes things like persistence or, well, stubbornness. Research suggests it's maybe 20 to 60% genetic.
That's a big range.
It is. It's likely a complex mix of many small genetic variations, polymorphisms they're called, affecting how brain cells talk to each other. And critically, these genes interact with our environment. Our experiences can influence which genes are actually switched on or off.
So it's nature and nurture.
Always. But the key takeaway is that stubbornness isn't just a choice, it has real biological roots.
It's literally part of our physical makeup.
Okay, fascinating. Let's shift gears then. How does this play out socially, in groups?
Right. So our sources talk about how stubborn individuals can actually end up having more equilibrium social power in a network.
Equilibrium social power. What does that mean in practice? Think of it like this. In a group discussion, the really stubborn person kind of acts like an anchor. They plant their feet, state their position, and over time, they can actually pull the group's overall opinion closer to their own viewpoint.
So they can shift the whole group dynamic.
They can. And on a larger scale, this can even impact how societies function. The sources suggest that having stubborn people in a network can actually prevent one single viewpoint or leader from completely dominating. It helps maintain a diversity of opinions.
Huh. So it could actually be a force for democracy in a way, by stopping total conformity?
Potentially, yeah. It acts as kind of brake on autocracy. It preserves different perspectives.
That's a surprisingly positive spin. But I'm guessing there's a downside.
Oh, absolutely. A big one. Stubbornness is strongly linked to polarization.
Echo chambers.
Exactly. When people mostly listen to and get influenced by others who already agree with them, that's called bias assimilation, their views can become more extreme. They become less willing to even consider other arguments.
You see that online all the time.
Definitely. The sources talk about segregated opinion clusters forming, where finding common ground becomes almost impossible.
And even on a smaller scale, like in a workplace.
Yeah. The sources give that example of the stubborn boss who creates this atmosphere of fear. Nobody dares to report a mistake because they know the boss won't listen or might react badly, even if the consequences are serious.
Right. So it really is that double-edged sword idea again. It can stop total control, but it can also drive people apart and prevent progress.
Perfectly put. And this plays out differently across our lifespan too, doesn't it?
Yeah, let's talk development. How does stubbornness look in kids?
Well, in early childhood, you see things like active disobedience, temper tantrums, which, are actually a normal part of development, testing boundaries.
The terrible twos.
Exactly. But the sources note if that behavior gets consistently reinforced, it can become a learned pattern. And for kids who've had really controlling experiences early on, stubbornness can become like a defense mechanism.
Makes sense.
And it can show up differently for, say, children with autism, often related to difficulty with changes in routine or maybe sensory needs not being met.
Okay. And then as we get older, teenagers, adults.
That resistance to change can really start to hold people back, missed opportunities, It gets tied up with our self-image, feeling like we have to stick to our guns to protect ourselves or our needs.
Defensiveness.
Yeah, defensiveness, anxiety, maybe trust issues from the past, that strong feeling of needing to be in control, an internal locus of control, it's called. All that seems to feed into adult stubbornness.
And then later in life, you mentioned adult children and aging parents earlier.
Right. That's a common friction point. The sources cite studies showing a high percentage of adult kids reporting stubbornness in their elderly parents. Often it's about this mismatch of goals.
Like the kids want to help ensure safety, but the parent insists on doing things their own way, even if it's risky.
Exactly. The parents might resist advice or help, maybe because they fear losing independence even when their abilities are declining. It leads to a lot of frustration, and sometimes the kids just kind of give up asking.
Yeah, I can see that.
Though it's important the sources differentiate between that kind of negative persistence in older adults, which correlates with lower well-being,
right,
and a more positive type they call tenacity, which is different.
So the purpose or the driver behind the stubbornness really shifts throughout life. A toddler wanting control is different from an older adult wanting autonomy.
Precisely. And overlaying all of this is culture.
Yes. Culture shapes everything.
It really does. How we express stubbornness, how we perceive it.
Yeah.
It's deeply cultural. Think about apologizing.
Oh, yeah. Very different across cultures.
Huge differences between, say, many East Asian cultures and typical Western approaches. Or even something like punctuality. What counts as late varies wildly around the world.
True. Being on time means different things.
And the sources highlight how individualistic cultures, like maybe in the U.S., might view stubbornness differently, perhaps as standing your ground, showing individuality, maybe even pride.
Versus more collectivist cultures.
Exactly, where maybe humility, fitting in, adapting to the group are valued more highly, so stubbornness might be seen more negatively.
So whether it's good or bad really depends on the cultural context you're in.
It's very relative.
Right.
Which leads us to think about the consequences more broadly. How does stubbornness actually manifest, and what are the results? It really is this double-edged sword we keep mentioning.
Absolutely. And the sources make this really important distinction, don't they? Between adaptive persistence, the good stubbornness, and maladaptive obstinacy, the bad kind. Let's unpack that. What defines persistence?
Okay, so persistence, the adaptive kind, has these 5 key elements according to the sources. Energy, imagination, resilience, good judgment, and crucially, a focus on the goal.
Okay, focus on the goal, not necessarily the method.
Exactly. Persistent people are deeply committed to achieving something, but they're flexible about how they get there. They experiment, they listen to feedback, they adjust their approach.
Like General de Gaulle you mentioned, or Prophet Elijah committed to the vision, but maybe adaptable in tactics.
Right. That stubborn tenacity seen as a virtue? Real strength isn't just blindly sticking to something. It's knowing when to hold them and when to fold them, essentially. The benefits are huge. Resilience, focus, innovation, setting boundaries, self-improvement, leadership, even grit and potentially longevity.
Okay, so that's the positive side. What about obstinacy then? The wrong kind of stubborn.
Obstinacy is described as more of a recipe for failure. It's that reflexive no, just resisting any change to your ideas, often stemming from personality.
Less about the goal, more about just not changing your mind.
Exactly. Obstinate people tend not to listen well. They get defensive if you point out flaws. They cling rigidly to their first idea, even if it's clearly not working or wasn't well informed to begin with.
That unthinking, I won't quit, even when quitting or changing is the smart move.
Right. Sometimes it's about proving you're strong, refusing any contradictory information. The sources even call it induced stupidity because you're effectively blocking out learning.
Wow. So persistence, adaptable, goal-focused. Obstinacy, rigid, idea-focused, maybe ego-driven.
That's a great summary. And the difference is stark when you look at something like addiction.
Right. Addiction seems like a classic case of that maladaptive obstinacy, that harmful cycle.
Totally. The sources describe that pattern of denial, blaming everyone else, resisting any suggestion that change is needed.
I can stop whatever I want. Minimizing the consequences, rationalizing.
Exactly. And that denial is a powerful defense mechanism, right? It shields the person from the painful reality. But as we discuss, those brain changes in addiction make it even harder.
The brain itself is prioritizing the substance.
Yes. Impairing judgment, making it incredibly difficult to see the truth. Add to that the intense fear of withdrawal, fear of facing the damage done, fear of rebuilding life, and often deep shame, which fuels more defensiveness, more resistance.
And sometimes, well-meaning people around them can actually make it worse. Enabling.
Yeah, inadvertently. By protecting the person from consequences, they can unintentionally prolong the denial. It becomes this vicious cycle. Brain changes lead to impaired judgment and denial, which fuels resistance, which allows the addiction to continue.
The purpose, from their perspective, is just avoiding the immediate pain of facing it all, even if it leads to more pain long-term.
It's a tragic trap. And this kind of stubbornness obviously wreaks havoc on relationships, too.
Oh, absolutely. That refusal to compromise, to see another perspective. It's poison for any relationship, isn't it?
It really is. Whether it's with a partner, family, friends, it creates constant conflict. And it stems from those same roots: protecting self-image, perceived needs, defensiveness, anxiety, needing control.
And a core issue seems to be just not listening.
Exactly. If you're stuck in stubborn mode, you're not really hearing the other person. No listening, no understanding, no compromise.
We talked about aging parents and adult kids, that mismatch of goals. Parents may be rejecting advice out of fear or pride.
Right, leading to frustration, maybe the kid just coping by avoiding the topic, passive avoidance.
It feels like it fundamentally blocks empathy, doesn't it? If you can't step outside your own view, you can't connect with someone else's feelings or needs.
Precisely. No empathy, no real connection. And all of this impacts our health and well-being, both mental and physical.
Right, so the adaptive persistence, that greedy, resilient kind that has positive health links.
Yes. The sources connect it to resilience, optimism, grit, self-acceptance, which is actually linked to decreased mortality.
Interesting.
Yeah. Enhanced focus, self-improvement. It can even be a life extender for older adults, helping them maintain routines and engagement.
But the flip side, obstinacy.
That takes a toll. Being difficult to live with damages relationships. Resisting necessary change leads to missed opportunities, and it's strongly linked to emotional dysregulation.
Difficulty managing emotions.
Yeah. Frustration, mood swings, irritability, anger, even aggression or self-harm in severe cases. It's often seen alongside conditions like personality disorders, bipolar disorder, OCD, anxiety.
So again, it boils down to flexibility and emotional control. Adaptable stubbornness with emotional regulation can be good. Rigid stubbornness, fueled by negative emotions, not so much.
Exactly. Which brings us back to AI. How does AI even begin to grapple with something this human, this complex?
Well, it seems AI is getting pretty good at modeling some aspects, like our cognitive biases, our resistance to change.
Right. AI can analyze huge data sets, our online behavior, how we communicate to spot patterns and predict who might resist a new idea or process.
It can identify specific biases that make us resistant.
Yeah, like the status quo bias, we just prefer things the way they are. Or loss aversion, we fear losing something more than we value gaining something of equal worth. AI can pinpoint these tendencies.
So it can map out our likely sticking points based on data. That could be useful for, say, managing change in an organization.
Definitely. It allows for more data-informed, flexible strategies. Predictive AI can identify likely resistors or early adopters, and reinforcement learning can help refine how interventions are delivered.
But there's always a but with AI and human stuff, isn't there?
There is, the big one. AI identifies the patterns, predicts the bias, but it doesn't feel the bias. It doesn't feel the discomfort of change, the fear of loss, the attachment to the familiar.
It's statistical, not emotional.
Exactly. It gets the what and maybe the how of our resistance, but it misses the deep emotional why.
And that seems especially true when AI tries to model our emotions and motivations.
Yeah, the sources are very clear. Current AI doesn't genuinely understand emotional context. It can learn to recognize facial expressions or tone of voice linked to emotions in its training data.
It can mimic.
It can mimic, yes, but it doesn't have that theory of mind. We humans have that intuitive grasp of what someone else might be thinking or feeling.
It sees the frown, but doesn't get the frustration or unmet need behind it.
Precisely. And that lack of real empathy is a major limitation. Empathy isn't just feeling with someone. It actually helps us think better, solve problems more effectively. Sources call it a cognitive enhancer.
So AI mimicking emotions. That raises some tricky issues, doesn't it? Creating a false sense of connection.
It does. We might start trusting or relying on an AI that's just performing emotion, not experiencing it. There's a difference between emotional performance and emotional experience.
That is a bit unsettling. And it ties into this whole challenge of AI dealing with human irrationality. We're often not logical.
That's putting it mildly. Behavioral science shows we rely on all sorts of mental shortcuts, biases. We're predictably irrational, you could say.
And if AI learns from our irrational data,
then it risks learning and even amplifying those same irrational biases. Garbage in, garbage out, as you said. Plus, people might behave differently if they know an AI is learning from them, further skewing the data.
So aligning AI with our true values is tough when we aren't always rational and our values are complex and shifting.
Exactly. AI is often designed for rationality, which clashes with our human nature. And interestingly, sources point out some biases might even have evolutionary value they're seen in other animals too.
So maybe trying to make AI eliminate all our biases could be risky. Yeah. Might strip away something essentially human.
It's a real concern. And programming values is hard. We often use simple proxy goals, which can lead to AI finding loopholes, specification gaming, or reward hacking to meet the letter of the goal, but not the spirit.
Like the AI learning to cheat at a game instead of playing it properly.
Right. It's a huge challenge. Developing beneficial AI without just reflecting our flaws or losing essential human qualities. Let's pivot, though, to the more positive applications. How can AI help with stubbornness?
Okay, yeah, it's not all warnings. AI could actually help us understand stubbornness much better.
Absolutely. By analyzing massive data sets in real time, AI can give us a much finer-grained picture of behavioral dynamics, help spot problematic patterns early. It can integrate digital traces, maybe even physiological markers of emotion.
Like a superpowered research assistant?
Kind of, yeah. And predictive modeling using machine learning can anticipate resistance based on past data, which roles, teams, or even subcultures might push back against change, allowing for proactive, tailored interventions.
It could even help understand the biology, looking at genetics or brain scans.
Potentially, yes. Correlating large data sets of genetic and brain imaging data with behavioral measures of stubbornness to find links, like that amygdala or insular cortex activity we talked about.
Okay, so better understanding. What about actually mitigating the bad kinds of stubbornness?
There's real promise there, too. Think about addiction again. AI chatbots for mental health therapy.
Accessible, maybe less stigma.
Exactly. Available 24/7 tracking patterns offering personalized cognitive behavioral therapy exercises. Early trials mentioned in the sources show they can be effective, and people actually trust them.
And for emotional dysregulation.
AI-powered wearables, smartwatches, trackers could analyze mood fluctuations, maybe trigger prompts for calming exercises. Computerized CBT programs can teach regulation skills. AI allows for real-time feedback and personalized adjustments.
And just general resistance to change, in workplaces or personal life.
AI-driven change frameworks can anticipate sticking points and personalize the approach, targeted communication, customized training, maybe gentle nudges to help people overcome things like status quo bias or loss aversion.
So using AI to make support more personalized, accessible, and data-driven to break down those maladaptive walls. What about the good kind of stubbornness? Fostering persistence, grit.
That's a really important, maybe trickier question. There's a concern, right? If AI makes everything too easy, do we lose our own resilience?
The AI as partner, not crutch idea.
Exactly. But AI can be used strategically here. Sources suggest educational approaches, using AI to handle routine stuff, freeing up teachers or mentors to push us towards deeper critical thinking, exploring different viewpoints, defending ideas. AI could even be a non-judgmental sparring partner for practicing arguments.
Interesting. So AI helps create space for the hard fun of learning.
Right. AI could curate stories of resilience, model decision-making, wait or quit. The goal is to use AI to help us struggle well, create environments where we're challenged to think bigger, build that cognitive resilience.
So strategic integration to cultivate determination without eroding our own capacity. And finally, this really cutting-edge idea, AI in philosophical counseling.
Yeah, this is fascinating. Using AI not just for mental health, but for exploring those deeper existential questions.
Questions that often involve our core beliefs, where stubbornness might lurk.
Exactly. AI can act as a non-judgmental coach or sounding board. It can challenge your assumptions, ask probing questions, help you clarify your thinking about life, meaning, purpose, all in a safe space.
Making philosophy less intimidating, maybe more accessible.
That's the idea. Normalizing these deeper inquiries, AI could even adopt different personas. Imagine asking a Jungian AI analyst persona to look at your recurring thought patterns. It can offer tilted perspectives to spark insight.
Creating a dynamic space for big thinking, introducing friction and doubt in a helpful way.
Right. Reintroducing challenge to keep us intellectually nimble. So for someone wrestling with, say, their own stubborn beliefs about life or death, AI could be a unique tool.
Not replacing a human therapist or philosopher, but offering a different kind of structured partner for introspection.
Precisely. It lacks consciousness, lacks empathy, but it can process vast philosophical texts, generate novel perspectives, and guide a structured exploration.
Okay, so wrapping this all up, stubbornness is incredibly complex. Roots in psychology, biology, society, our development, our culture.
And that crucial difference between adaptive persistence, which is a strength, and maladaptive obstinacy, which holds us back.
And AI. It offers this powerful new lens for analysis, predicting patterns, identifying biases.
But with that fundamental limitation, it doesn't truly get human emotion or experience, the empathy gap.
Which leads to ethical challenges around influence, manipulation, responsibility.
Big challenges, but also real potential for good, enhancing our understanding, helping mitigate the bad stuff like addiction or emotional dysregulation.
And even fostering the good stuff, that adaptive grit, plus this intriguing philosophical counseling angle.
Yeah. It seems navigating stubbornness in this age of AI is all about balance. Using AI's analytical power, but staying grounded in human values and aware of its limits.
Not eliminating stubbornness, but maybe cultivating the right kind. Deepening our understanding of this paradox within ourselves.
Exactly. It's an ongoing journey developing ethical AI, figuring out human-AI collaboration, and doing that crucial self-reflection.
That really hits home. So for everyone listening, think about your own life. When has your stubbornness really served you well, been a strength? And when might it have, well, gotten in your way, held you back? How might understanding it better, maybe even someday, with a little help from AI, change how you see those moments and maybe change the choices you make next time? Definitely something to think about.
This is DigitView.